What's up, y'all? Welcome back to Dolphins Daily, your daily dose of Dolphins content with your boy Chris Kane. Let's talk about the Dolphins. We started yesterday's show talking about Chop Robinson being carted off the field, and I'll be honest, I was a little doom and gloom. All right, I did that. I'll take it because, in my experience, if you get carted off, that means things are not good. Typically, lower leg, lower body injury, concussion level stuff. None of that stuff is good, right? So we kind of prepped for how the team would look if Chop was out for the year. None of that stuff was good. Turns out after our show, because again, that's how it always happens. Chop went on social media and tweeted, "Nothing serious, y'all. I'm all good," which he could have just been, putting on air. People be saying that, like, "I'm fine, don't worry about it." But then he returned to practice today, which is confirmation of his tweet because he said, "I'm good," and then he sat out practice. I'm like we're all looking at the Rams and Matt Stafford right now, where the Rams are like, yeah, Matt Stafford's good, but he's like leaning halfway over. He's not practicing. He's just walking through. It's like, is that guy really okay? Sometimes it looks a little more suspicious than the wording is. Chop said I'm good. Chop was back at practice today. So no doom and gloom there. It doesn't mean, he wasn't injured. There were reports later in the day that it looked like he had like an arm injury or shoulder injury. We found out later it was a rib injury. And ribs are a little dicey because you can bruise your ribs and it hurts a lot, but they're not like your ribs are fine. They just a contusion kind of happened. And they have like little, I guess, straight jackets, for lack of a better term, that can kind of give you extra padding on the rib cage. So if you get impacted on the side, it doesn't hurt as much. And again, he's not in a position where he'll be carrying a ball and getting tackled. So as long as he's not getting like, I guess, thrown down and jumped on top of by an offensive lineman, more or less he can play through it. It's probably a pain threshold situation, but I haven't heard anything about cracked or broken ribs. I assume they did MRIs and X-rays. If they saw anything cracked, he wouldn't be on the field. So we knocked on wood, we prayed, we said, hey, can't keep being injured. Just give us some good news. And finally, for once, we have good injury news to a key player that, barring anything else crazy happening, Chop seems like he's not only good for practice, but should be good for the next preseason game. And we can keep our hopes of having a three horseman pass rush alive. I was very happy when I saw that. When he tweeted that, I was like, you good, Chop? And then he still was on the field today. So I was like, all right, I guess I was wrong. However, we are never going to do a show, evidently, without talking about injuries because offensive lineman Jermaine Ifedi tore his triceps in the Chicago game. Finally got the results of his test, and he's been placed on the IR, which means that he is out for the year. If you get placed on the IR during the preseason, basically you're done for the year, barring something crazy happening. But yeah, most likely he's out for the year. We just signed him last week to give us more depth on the offensive line, and immediately another injury out for the year. We didn't think he was going to be a giant contributor. More like if guys were hurt, which we have guys hurt, he can fill in. He's been a pro, you know, 8, 9 year vet. We thought we had something there. Immediately he got hurt. He also wasn't good in the Bears game. Like he was kind of getting pushed around, which may contribute to why he was available in the first place for us to get. But he's out for the year as well. Another offensive line injury. So the Dolphins went out today and signed Yanni Kajust to fill the spot right tackle. He is also very injury prone. He literally missed his first 2 years in the league with injury, which is that's never good, right? He played for the Patriots, so that's fine. Then he got traded to a couple more teams, and he just didn't play. He played to the Giants and the Jets, I believe, and he didn't play. So he made two other rosters, and then didn't play at all for them. And it's just kind of been chilling. He's 29 years old, um, third round pick. I guess there's some pedigree to a third round pick, but he's never been like a really good NFL player. For like, I was trying to like not be like hateful. Like he's been bad. No, he's been, I suppose, kind of serviceable. Is that a term? Like he can be on the field. He I think he knows what the position is. He's a decent sized body, but he's not someone that if you have to depend on for more than probably a couple plays or a game or two that you really want on the field. Again, anyone you're finding on the offensive line, possibly defensive line this time of year, is not someone that you have to think is like some super high value person. Because every team in the league needs offensive and defensive line help. So if you're on the market 3 weeks before the season and you're not like completely broken, then you're probably, I wouldn't even say second rate. I would say you're probably someone who during normal circumstances wouldn't make a 52-man roster, 54-man roster. I think you're someone that it's a practice squad person that if someone got hurt, you got called up. That's basically what's on the market right now, barring like a trade or anything crazy. Um, I'm happy we got extra depth there, but again, we're now getting to slim pickings. We've picked up 4 offensive linemen in the last 2.5 weeks. There aren't that many big bodies. Like, listen, I'm almost about to try out for offensive lineman for the Dolphins. Like, I'm gonna have to put on 150 pounds, but if that's what it takes to live out my dream, I'll do it. All right, I will sit at a barbecue joint and just eat until I put on a buck 50, and I'll get on the line. Will I get ran over? Of course I will, 100%. But will I be on the field wearing a jersey, pointing to my mom in the stands like I told you I'd make it, and then I'll be carted off like 3.5 seconds later? Fine, I don't care. I don't care. Not every dream comes true the way you want it to, right? But yeah, we have some issues on the offensive line. We have some issues with depth. We have a ton of issues with injuries, but we're hoping that some of our injured players start coming back, so we don't need to keep going out here and picking up guys who probably work at Home Depot right now, because that's kind of what we're doing right now. And I'm hoping, knock on wood again, that we don't have any more offensive line injuries and we don't have any more secondary injuries. We just can't sustain it. There are not enough good players in the league. Let's just get healthy, please. There are a lot of people who going to this year are just not on the Dolphins bandwagon. I don't know other way to say it. They're very down on the team. I think that's part of why you keep hearing about the Tyreek being traded rumors, is because we know that Tyreek is volatile to say the least, and we know that Tyreek wants to win. He is a me guy. We understand all that stuff, and the idea is that the Dolphins aren't good. He's going to basically force his way out, and because we don't owe him any more money after this year, it's not hard to trade him. So I understand all that. I don't believe Tyreek is initiating any of this. I think it's just people outside the league. But people think our GM's on a hot seat, coach on a hot seat, quarterback on a hot seat. So that kind of leads you to not really believe in the team. Totally cool, right? Plenty of pundits on TV. We're in the offseason. Shador's hurt, so we can't talk about that story. No one cares about Philly, despite the fact they won the championship, and the Cowboys are a circus. So now people are just looking for stories and then trying to like really blow it out of proportion. So Colin Cowherd, who's been known to have god awful takes, including, "Hey LeBron, you can retire. We have Ben Simmons," the worst take of all time, because this is not a basketball pod, but if you know, you know, right? So he has never been a Dolphins guy. He's not a Tua guy. I think he likes Mike McDaniel like as an idea, like how he calls plays, but not really him as a coach. So he had a scathing review of where the Dolphins are. He said, "With Mike McDaniel in Miami, what are they? I don't know what they are. I understand it takes a while to break up the culture, but I would argue that Miami doesn't even have any culture, and it all starts with a lack of accountability. You can't be a bowl of Jello. That's what Miami is. A lot of movement, no meat in the sandwich." Now I take a lot of offense to calling Miami a incomplete Cuban sandwich. You guys know an authentic Cuban got good meat in the middle, keeps you full. But this is in line with kind of how he's felt about the Dolphins this whole time. He's not a Tua guy. He thinks Tua's too small, and he likes more physical teams. He's a big John Harbaugh guy, so he's like loves the Chargers, despite the fact that the Chargers don't win it at all. He loves Herbert and the Chargers; they never win, but it's fine. We'll save that for a different conversation. I don't think he's completely wrong about the culture thing. I've mentioned that on this show before myself. Is what is the team culture? Are we speed and fast? Are we, glamorous, sexy? What are we trying to be? And I think part of the offseason has been trying to reestablish what the culture is. And the culture should be a team that is not counted out. Now, that's not easy to overcome when during the offseason, half your team gets injured and now you're basically playing with second and third string guys for the year, because now you can't say we're putting our best foot forward. But also, this is very clickbaity. Like, you can't be Jello and a sandwich with no meat. Obviously, the Dolphins during a bad year still won 8 games, which is at the very least middle of the pack. We were the 13th pick in the first round, which means we were even higher than halfway. We're in the upper 50% of the league during a bad year where our starting quarterback missing 6 games. So when you say, "Oh, this team is nothing, y'all are Jello, no meat in the sandwich," like, we're still betting a lot of teams that you really like that didn't do anything last year. Plenty of teams with great defenses, or we're a really good offense that we're drafting behind Miami. So, there's some hyperbole there, but there's also some truth in the fact that I would say in the time that we've been here, we haven't established that we are definitively this thing outside of fast and creative. Now, if that's the identity, that's cool. I haven't seen that formula maybe since the Rams and Kurt Warner and Marshall and those guys, and the fastest show on turf, right? Those defenses were a little bit better than they got credit for. That's like historically we just think of them as Marshall Falk and him and Torrey Holt and Isaac Bruce and Ozzie Keem and those guys, but they actually were they were solid on defense as well. They just scored a lot, and the way they played the offense was pretty cool. So maybe that's the last team that we can say that played a style of offense that is built on that much subterfuge and all that. But yeah, I there's some truth in what he's saying, but he's putting sauce on it. There's no other way to say it. He's putting sauce on it, trying to get ratings before the year. I get it. Another person critical of Coach McDaniel, who I think has also been honest about what he's trying to do. Like, hey, we let some things slide. We've obviously we had guys who weren't respectful to coach in the locker room. Those guys have been traded. Two was taking a bigger like vocal approach. We think we have the right guys on defense. I think until this year starts playing out, we can't really talk about the culture unless you say up until this point the team hasn't had culture, and then we'll see what this year becomes. If this year is the last few years, then yeah, everybody's getting fired. I think it's gonna be a house cleaning, and they'll get someone in like a Mike Vrabel type, who's like hard nosed. We're gonna get it right, like whoever that is, and they will, I guess, steer the ship in the right direction. But yeah, he has punch sauce on it. I don't, I don't begrudge him. He's got to make money. We know how TV works, but we'll move on. Now, I told you guys in the last episode that I had seen some clips from the joint practice, and they were really bad for the secondary. Evidently, it just got worse from there. This There are reports that this was the most lopsided joint practice that some reporters had ever seen between the Lions and the Dolphins yesterday, and that is not good. That's not good. And it's echoed by some of the players. Tua came out and said, "We just never got a rhythm going. Like we never felt like we had a good offensive rhythm. We never felt like we got in sync. It didn't feel like we were close. It didn't feel like we were one play away from getting it right. We just all game were off kilter, couldn't execute. O line got pushed around, D line got pushed around. The secondary got absolutely obliterated. I mean, it basically was a complete whitewash. I was seeing reporters being like, it felt like a JV versus the varsity team. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that happens in joint practices, right? Like the Ravens and the Commanders had a fight at joint practice. They canceled the practice. They just said, "Hey, go home. Y'all fighting too much. We're not doing this." So that kind of stuff happens. The Dolphins, when we had our practices with the Bears, they were going out of control, cheap shotting. A lot of stuff happened in joint practice, but I don't hear about the discrepancy between the teams. They just say one team was sharp, one team was not sharp. These teams were chippy. It got a little physical, like that kind of thing. The reporters on the ground said, "Hey, this looks bad. This looks bad." Now, to be fair, Tyreek wasn't playing. Uh, Zach Sealer was out. Again, Chop got like carted off. So there was a lot of things that went into. We don't have our full offensive line. We have to put some context behind why the practice was this bad. Jalen Waddle apparently is nursing an injury he kind of got from the Chicago game that he's been practicing through, but he's not 100%. So Jalen's not 100. Tyreek's not there. Zach's not there. 3 to 4 of our offensive line starters aren't there. Have some grace, right? This isn't like a regular season game where we lost 48-0. It's not that kind of situation. But Coach McDaniel was saying I was looking forward to the practice because I know Detroit takes it seriously. I know how intense they are. This would be a good litmus test for us to see how intense we are, how we handle physicality. And evidently, test number one, they absolutely failed. I didn't see a redeeming report from anything. Not even the most, ardent and fanned out beat writers for the Dolphins. It was like, hey, this was a bad day at the office. Like it was a universal thrashing, which at this point, we're 3 weeks from the season. We should be ideally rounding into form. I'm not upset that Detroit could have gotten the better of us. I think Detroit is one of the probably 6, 7 best teams in the league. If they made it to the Super Bowl this year, no one would be surprised. It would be like, yeah, that seems right. It's either them or Philly, maybe the Commanders, but I think those 3 teams, people feel, yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. But you would think after the last joint practice, after Chicago pulled the punt test and just said, hey, we don't think y'all about that action, push people around, knocked our quarterback down and joint practice. You're not supposed to be doing. Did all that stuff. Then we played the game where it was uneven, but whatever. I would have thought that we would have came out and played even more bear like in this game, even if we were a little bit on the dirty side, just to like let people know y'all not gonna be pushing us around. And to hear that it went the other way is like, okay, so did the message not get through? Is it just that they were that much bigger, faster, stronger? Um, Tua said the energy of the team kind of felt off, so that leads me to believe that maybe they didn't approach practice the right way, which I guess ultimately goes back to the coach, which then goes back to the Colin Cowherd story, if that's how the order of events happened. But I don't like hearing this is the most lopsided practice I've ever seen. I don't like hearing that. If you said Jared Goff looked really sharp today, Amon-Ra St. Brown's an all pro, he's great. But Dolphins held their own. The score was 38-31, whatever. No problem. We can live with that. I don't want to hear that team looks super unprepared and like small and scared, and that team looks great. Not looking to hear that. Um, when I do the episode tomorrow, we'll talk about day 2 of the joint practice, and hopefully that will be a better report. I want to see the guys bounce back. I want to see some redemption. I want to see them pump their chest out and be like, hey, yesterday wasn't good. We locked back in day 2, got it right. Again, the score doesn't matter in joint practice. It's executing against another team. The plays that we drove to work, are they working? Are our man beaters working? Is our offensive line keeping two upright? Is our running backs doing their job? Can we stop them? That's what I want to hear about. I don't care about the score. I want to hear competitive, two good teams on the field. Looking forward to the season. That's what I'm looking forward to seeing. So when I do the episode tomorrow, we'll have a day 2 report, and I'm hoping that we have some good reports because I can't have 2 of these stories back to back. Like, yo, man, these boys they look unprepared. They look scared. Like, I don't want to hear that going into the year. I want to hear it. But as always, guys, thank you for tuning in to Dolphins Daily. We appreciate the love and support. Thank y'all for the likes and subscribes. We'll see you next time on Dolphins Daily. Peace.